Over a year ago, I did a review or playthrough, I honestly don't even know what I ended up making.
No! What is it?
Of Castlevania Lords of Shadow's main story. Now, since I haven't uploaded in 6 months, and I don't want to make Sony fanboy videos anymore because they're repetitive as shit, and my Castlevania hyperfixation is back, I thought I'd come back with a review of the DLCs for Castlevania Lords of Shadow. Those DLCs being Reverie and Resurrection. 2 DLCs that were released for Castlevania Lords of Shadow that together add 2 additional chapters to the game with 5 new levels. The first DLC was announced 2 months after the game came out in December of 2010, and was released in February of 2011. And then the follow-up was released in June of 2011, 4 months later. These DLCs are meant to explain how Gabriel Belmont went from the end of the main story to becoming Dracula. Now, these DLCs did not have great reception. Mostly because it was just more of the same shit as the main game, but also not done as well. And things were obviously quite rushed, especially story-wise. Which is something that Mercury Steam even admits to, as producer David Cox even said, "The problem was that the game's success caught everyone by surprise. It caught senior management by surprise, and they wanted us to do DLC. We never planned to do DLC, so we ended up doing DLC after the fact, and in hindsight, that was a mistake. It was rushed, we had to rush it to market." So very clearly they were not planning this DLC, but senior management wanted them to do it in order to capitalize off the game's success. But is the DLC actually that bad? Well, that's what we're going to find out in today's review of Castlevania Lords of Shadow, Reverie, and Resurrection. Let's begin. Castlevania Lords of Shadow Reverie was the most disappointing thing since my son. Except this also includes an additional chapter with 3 levels. And something you'll notice very quickly, as soon as you start up the first level of this DLC, is that the art style of the cutscenes is completely different. Mostly that instead of using the 3D character models, they're drawn in this very cool gothic art style. I think it's a pretty neat way to change up the storytelling. Anyway, the story picks up literally as soon as the main game ends. You're at the top of the Necromancer's Abyss, and Laura calls you telepathically to ask you for help. You remember Laura, the child vampire from Carmilla's castle? So there's no explanation for how you get from the Necromancer's Abyss to Carmilla's castle. You just show up there. You fight some vampires with Laura, and then she info dumps you about how killing the Lords of Shadow has put the world in peril, because now nobody is holding back the Forgotten One. The Forgotten One is a demon who was summoned by the Bernard family, you know, the original owners of Carmilla's castle. And the Bernard family tried to control the Forgotten One, but it didn't really work out for them, and so the founders of the Order had to fight the Forgotten One, but they couldn't beat him. So they just put him inside of a dimensional rift. However, now, because the founders are all dead, the Forgotten One can begin escaping the rift and destroying the world. Now, this is a lot to take in, because none of this was mentioned in the original story, so it all kind of feels like it just came out of nowhere. Which it did. I mean, it literally came out of nowhere. Like, none of the Lords of Shadow mentioned it. Like, you'd think at least one of them, instead of trying to argue with Gabriel about how killing them on Earth would kill them in heaven, would say some shit like, "Hey, you know, if you kill us, you'll release a world-ending demon that nobody can kill." The most that was mentioned in the original game was that the Bernards used to own the castle. So now you have to descend beneath the castle in order to enter the dimensional rift and kill the Forgotten One. Which just makes 0 sense. Like, the founders of the Order couldn't do it. Why does Laura just believe that Gabriel can kill the Forgotten One? There's no explanation for why Gabriel should be able to kill the Forgotten One, or should even stand a chance against the Forgotten One. It's literally just, hey, let's go fight this powerful demon who is a worldly threat with no plan whatsoever. Like, it would make sense if you had to do something like forge a magic item that might be able to hurt him. You know, as opposed to these puzzles where you've got to find blood from the founders, but no, you just do fuck all. However, even ignoring the story, the levels are not really that much better. The levels add absolutely nothing that you haven't already seen in the main story. They don't add any new enemies to the game, or even any new bosses or mini-bosses. It's just all the same enemies that you've fought 100 times over. They just mix them together in different swarms, which none of them particularly complement each other. Like, it's just a bunch of enemies you've already fought thrown together. The only thing that was really new about this DLC is being able to play as Laura. And don't even get me started on playing as Laura. I do not like playing as Laura. Like, I get what they were going for, giving you a new character. This is something that could have been really fun had Laura actually been a fun character to play as. But Laura has like 5 things that she can do and nothing else. Like, Laura literally has one good attack that can just be abused to win all of the fights that you use her for, which is not fun. Like, every combat encounter using her, I just dashed around and charged up the Palpatine lightning attack just to kill all the enemies, which really isn't a lot of fun. Except, honestly, trying to use her regular attacks is even less fun. And another thing that really bugs me about these levels, which this also bugs me about the next DLC, is that there are 0 healing fountains. Which really sucks, because the way that the difficulty of this DLC increases from the main game is not by making enemies deal more damage or making more difficult enemies. It's just by swarming you with more enemies. So you're bound to get hit at least a few times. And now onto the puzzles in the DLC. If you were thinking that the puzzles with this DLC's saving grace, you're still wrong. Because most of the puzzles in this DLC really suck. I probably enjoyed one of the puzzles, which was this Zobek teleporter puzzle, which was actually really cool. However, pretty much all the other puzzles are just not fun at all. The fucking chessboard puzzle is probably the worst of them all, but some of the other puzzles are just not really that much fun either. This chapter's one saving grace is probably the climbing sections. Mostly because they're kind of the only part of this chapter that is just decent. Anyway, at the end of the chapter, you open the seal by doing this incredibly easy puzzle, and Gabriel has to drink all of Laura's blood so that he can become a vampire and enter the dimensional prison. Because you need to be a vampire to enter the dimensional prison. And if you're wondering why I didn't mention anything story-wise between this and meeting Laura and her info dumping, it's because there's literally nothing that happens story-wise in these levels. You just go through the castle. Like, the problem with this DLC can really just be summed up as most of it just feels like filler. But anyway, let's move on to Resurrections. Castlevania Lords of Shadow Resurrections includes one additional chapter with 2 levels, both of which are shorter than a paraplegic dwarf with difficulty inflation about as natural as the price inflation at Coles and Woolworths. Not only is the Forgotten One ridiculously harder than every other boss in the game, including Satan, but there are also 0 healing fountains before you reach it. And also, before you can get close to him, you have to fight like 10 Abyss Reapers and 3 of these sword cloth motherfuckers, who are sure to deplete your health. So instead of a healing fountain, you get the exact opposite of a healing fountain. Also, not to mention, the Forgotten One, who is meant to be this all-powerful world-ending threat, is really unthreatening. Like, in your first encounter with him, you literally climb right next to him, and he doesn't see you. Like, is he stupid? And if you do get discovered by him, he just blasts you, and then it's like... Not to mention, this climbing section, up until the lava starts rising, is just really boring. Like, climbing stealth does not work in this game. But when you do eventually get past it, the Forgotten One has to do this stupid shit where he makes himself temporarily weaker in order to break the seal. Why does he need to magically remove power from his body to break the seal, when he could very easily just punch it open? And then Gabriel just breaks his leg armor, straight away, in a cutscene. Yeah, that's right, this powerful world-ending demon that not even the founders of the Brotherhood could harm. And you just break his leg armor like that. Like, this just really undermines all the build-up to the Forgotten One about how he's this really powerful world-ending threat. Like what, you're telling me the founders couldn't just break his leg armor? Anyway, we get a Symphony of the Night reference.
Enough talk! How about you?
And then we get to fight him. And aside from that, the fight with the Forgotten One is actually pretty good. You do have to be kind of strategic by targeting his broken armor, which is neat, and it becomes harder in his second phase where his armor is broken at his stomach level and you have to jump up to attack him. His attacks are pretty easy to keep track of in this fight and sometimes avoid, but if you're a slimy, greasy, greedy fuck like I am, then you'll keep getting hit by them anyway. Some attacks are just really easy to avoid, like this, which won't hit you from up close to him. You can't really stay close to him all the time, and you have to be mobile and move around the Forgotten One, because a lot of his attacks are area attacks that will fuck you up close. So overall, it's a pretty good fight, and after getting him to half health, his power finishes destroying the seal. And so the Forgotten One's power slowly returns to his body, and Gabriel just stands there. Huh? Like, why would you just stand there and let the Forgotten One monologue to you and reclaim all of his power? Like, at least attack him before he gets it. He's fucking distracted. Are you, like, what? Oh, and then the Forgotten One has a low-tier god moment.
It would be easier to end yourself now, warrior.
I'm just gonna stump you, you're gonna keep coming back, I'm gonna seal up all my cracks, you're gonna keep coming back. Why? Cause you keep smelling the syrup. You're gonna stay on my dick until you die. You serve no purpose in life. Kill yourself.
Anyway, the next level begins with another bullshit stealth climbing section, which really makes me question the Forgotten One's intelligence. Oh, and it also has this lava platforming section with jumps that are incredibly difficult to judge. Yeah, can I just fight the Forgotten One already? Like, why do we have to put so much fucking filler into this? Then you get to fight a bunch of flaming skeletons. Or you can skip them, because they are bullshit and will deplete your health. Especially because 4 of them will gangbang you at the same time. Anyway, now it's time for round 2 with the Forgotten One, as he puts his power into destroying another seal that he can't just punch open. And this fight is really hard. The Forgotten One has a few more attacks, and the parts of him that become unarmored are increasingly harder to hit. The final one being his head, which you can only hit if he either lowers his head to your level, or if you double jump. And I actually really like this fight. This fight is awesome. My only real issue is this QuickTime event here. I just really don't like it. I do not like how you have to aim with WASD and the camera drifts. Like, you have no idea how frustrating it is to beat down the Forgotten One, who is already a difficult fight, and then lose my progress because I missed this shot by a bee's dick 100 times over. Like, this would be a lot better if it didn't have the camera drift. Other than that, it's an awesome fight, and the final third of the fight was honestly the best part of it, because it's the hardest one, and also I saved up a bunch of shadow magic, and it really ended up feeling like an all-out brawl between me and the Forgotten One, so I think that was really fun. Anyway, after defeating the Forgotten One, you get the final cutscene, where the Forgotten One goes to reclaim his power. However, Gabriel's IQ has jumped up about 10 points, and he decides to jump in front of it and take his power, and then just annihilates the Forgotten One in one hit. Which is pretty cool. Kinda disappointing we couldn't get an extra part of the fight, where the player gets to beat the Forgotten One using his own power, but oh well. I guess you would have been too overpowered if you actually got to use this power in gameplay, but it doesn't matter. I mean, I'm sure they won't retcon Gabriel's powers later in the series, you know, that won't happen. Anyway, Gabriel just disappears, and that's the end of the entire DLC. So what are my final thoughts on Reverie and Resurrection? Wrong slide. I mean, gameplay-wise, it's mostly fine. There's a lot of annoying shit in it. It doesn't really do anything new, but you can have fun playing it. Story-wise, it makes 0 sense and feels just really out of nowhere, probably because it was. And difficulty-wise, I guess it's also fine. I mean, aside from the fight with the Forgotten One, it's mostly the same stuff from the main game, but sometimes it just feels executed worse. It does try to give you new things like playing as Laura or doing stealth, but they really just feel half-baked and fall pretty flat. I mean, on the bright side, at least you get it for free with the Ultimate Edition of the game, so I didn't have to pay for it. Overall, I give this DLC a... Honestly, I'm just really fucking tired. I want to go to bed. Out of 10. Subscribe so you don't miss the next video in 4 years, where we'll rank the top 10 Mexican wrestler masks. And leave a like if you want me to make more game reviews. Also, big shout out to Hyperius, who for some reason hasn't cancelled this channel membership. Cheers for the membership, buddy. Appreciate you.